Hello again, and welcome to today's webinar on nutrition and AMD. Now, Diana Tang is an accredited practicing dietitian and researcher. She recently completed her PhD in the area of nutrition and AMD under the guidance of leading AMD researchers, Professor Bamini Gopinath, and ophthalmologist, Professor Paul Mitchell. Significant names, no doubt. Much of Diana's research has focused on developing and implementing interventions aimed at improving the mental and physical well-being of people impacted by age-related macular degeneration. She is also committed to raising awareness about age-related macular degeneration among the next generation of healthcare professionals by regularly lecturing undergraduate students on this topic. Without further ado, Diana, if you would like to share your screen and get started on the presentation. Thank you. Sorry, Diana, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Hamdi, is that sharing now?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So hi everyone, thank you very much for joining me today for this webinar on nutrition and AMD. I'd firstly like to thank the Macular Disease Foundation for inviting me to speak this afternoon. So before jumping straight into nutrition and AMD, I wanted to provide a brief overview about what AMD is for those who might be new to the MDFA community or those who are just starting to learn about AMD. As the name suggests, it's a condition that affects the macula, which is located in the middle of the retina, which is at the back of the eye. In Australia, about 1 in 7 people have some form of AMD, and AMD is classified into 2 stages, first being early AMD and then late stage AMD. Typically, those who have early AMD don't tend to show any signs of vision loss. The vision loss usually occurs when the condition has progressed to that late stage. And as part of late stage AMD, there is a dry form, also referred to as geographic atrophy or atrophic AMD, and then also wet AMD, otherwise known as neovascular AMD. And overall, AMD is the leading cause of severe vision loss and blindness in Australia, accounting for about 50% of blindness. This is just an image that I've borrowed from the Macular Disease Foundation just to show you what vision loss due to late AMD looks like. So you can see from this image that the side vision or the peripheral vision does remain intact, and that it's really just that central vision in the middle here that is affected. So in saying that though, loss of central vision has significant impacts on your day-to-day life, affecting activities such as reading and driving. So the risk factors for AMD include older age, gender, race, genetics, environmental and lifestyle risk factors. Age is the strongest among those risk factors for AMD, and the research has consistently shown that increasing age increases the risk of developing AMD. In terms of gender, AMD has been shown to affect both men and women, but about 65% of AMD cases occur among females. The condition is also more common among Caucasian populations, accounting for about 90% of all cases of AMD. Family history and genetics can also increase the risk of developing AMD, but research has shown that regular consumption of fish and zinc-containing foods has been shown to reduce this increased risk back to non-genetic risk levels. And I'll talk a little bit more about that once we get into the nutrition and AMD. In terms of modifiable risk factors, smoking has the strongest link with AMD. And the research evidence has consistently shown that smoking increases the risk of not only developing AMD, but also its progression as well. The research, however, has shown us that people who stop smoking have been able to reduce their risk of AMD back to a non-smoker's level, which is a very encouraging finding. And then high physical activity or high intensity of physical activity in a study that I think was published maybe a couple of weeks ago now has been shown to reduce the risk of developing AMD compared to low or moderate intensity exercise and no exercise as well. So then for the diet and the nutrition side, that'll be the focus of the rest of this talk. So I'll get into that now. Before I start, I just wanted to say, and I think Hamdi did mention this at the beginning too, but the recommendations that are discussed today are based on a general AMD population. So if you have other health conditions to consider, you might want to have a chat to your healthcare professional first, just to make sure there's no clashes or there's no interference between the recommendations. To get into nutrition and AMD, I really wanted to focus mainly on food and then link it to key nutrients sourced from these foods in relation to eye health and AMD, since we as humans eat food, not so much eating for nutrients. And a food first approach rather than relying on, say, supplements is the ideal first step. So there are 5 core food groups that I'll talk about, starting with vegetables, which also include legumes and beans. Veggies are a rich source of a range of nutrients, including vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. As you can see on screen, the serves per day vary slightly depending on your age and your gender, from about 5 serves to 6 serves. So 1 serve of vegetables is about 75 grams, and that's roughly equivalent to 100 to 350 kilojoules. If you prefer to use calories, that's about 24 to 84 kilocalories. So if you're aiming for that 5 serve a day target, that's roughly equivalent to just under 400 grams of vegetables per day. The examples on screen show what a serve size is for different types of vegetables. It's generally about half a cup of vegetables is equivalent to 1 serve, except in the case of raw leafy green vegetables, which are a bit more airy, less compact. So that's about 1 cup for 1 serve. You'll see on screen as well that frozen and tinned vegetables are also recommended here. And I just wanted to point out that in terms of the nutritional content of fresh versus frozen versus tinned, there really isn't too much of a difference if you're getting your fresh produce from, say, a major supermarket. Because once a vegetable or a produce has been picked, it does start gradually losing some nutrients over time. So if you think about the transportation process from farm to supermarket, and then the storage at the supermarket before it's available for you to purchase, it's not as rich in nutrition as it was when it was first picked. So unless you're able to get fresh veggies from your own garden or from a local farmer's market or directly from a farmer, I wouldn't stress too much about fresh versus frozen versus tinned for the nutritional content. And frozen and tinned are also great options to consider if you find that a lot of your fresh vegetables go off towards the end of the week because you haven't had a chance to consume them. So the storage life and the sustainability aspect is worth considering there. In terms of eye and macular health, vegetables, particularly dark green leafy vegetables, are a rich source of lutein and zeaxanthin. And these are antioxidants that are naturally found in the macula, and consuming them through the diet has been shown to reduce the risk of developing AMD. So this graph here shows the main sources of lutein and zeaxanthin in 14 different food items. And you can see at the beginning here, the top 4 sources are dark green leafy vegetables. So spinach, silver beet, kale, and parsley. Following that, we have a range of other different types of green, orange, and yellow produce, which also provide lutein and zeaxanthin, but we can see not to the same amount. Interestingly, though, a study looking at the typical diet of older Australians showed that the main contributors of lutein and zeaxanthin in the diet wasn't actually from the top 4 sources. It was actually firstly from broccoli, which is down here, followed by green beans, which is down here, and then oranges and Brussels sprouts. And this just shows that these particular food items are just more regularly consumed in the diet as opposed to the dark green leafy vegetables, which are richer in the lutein and the zeaxanthin. This same study among older Australians also showed that on average, older Australians were consuming just under 1 milligram of lutein and zeaxanthin per day. And although there aren't any formal recommended dietary intakes or RDIs for lutein and zeaxanthin, the evidence suggests that about 6 milligrams per day is an acceptable amount to be obtained from the diet. So you can see there is quite a difference between less than 1 milligram per day, which is what the average population of older adults is consuming, versus what is an acceptable amount. So 6 times the difference there. A tip to help increase your absorption of lutein and zeaxanthin is to consume these food sources with a fat source. And that's because lutein and zeaxanthin are what we call fat-soluble nutrients. And so it needs to be consumed with fat so that it's absorbed by the body. So examples of fat sources that you could pair these lutein and zeaxanthin food items with could include, for the leafy greens, it could be a drizzle of olive oil or a serve of avocado. For the cooked veggies, you could pair that with a serve of fish or lean meat. For the pistachios and oranges, you can have that with a serve of dairy of your choice, either cheese or yogurt, so that you get the fat source from there. For fruit, this one is easier to remember. So across the board, regardless of age or gender, 2 servings per day is recommended. You'll see that the serve size for a piece of fruit is 150 grams, which is double that of the vegetables at 75 grams, and equivalent to about 350 kilograms. So examples of 1 serve of fruit is on the screen, and a similar message here in terms of fresh, frozen, and tinned. They're all fine to consume. The only consideration is with tinned fruit to choose fruits that's in natural juice rather than syrup if you are mindful of your sugar and calorie intake, and also to strain the juice as well. Fruit, just like veggies, are a rich source of a number of vitamins and minerals, and each fruit and vegetable is unique, and the amount and types of nutrients found in each produce is different. So just like what we saw in the last slide with lutein and zeaxanthin, and how the quantity can vary quite dramatically across different types of fruits and vegetables, it's the same with other nutrients as well. So although fruits aren't really rich in lutein and zeaxanthin, certain fruits like berries, kiwi fruit, citrus fruits are rich in other nutrients like vitamin C and flavonoids, which are other antioxidant nutrients that have been linked to reducing the progression of AMD. So the main message here is to consume a variety of fruit and vegetables so that you're making the most out of these food groups. Sorry, I got distracted by looking at the chat, but I'll continue with the presentation and we'll get to the questions towards the end. For the next food group here, we have grains and cereals, and mostly whole grain and high fiber varieties are recommended. Serves per day vary quite a bit, as you can see on screen here. So ranging from 3 serves per day if you're female and over 70, to 6 serves per day for younger men and women. The serve sizes are also a bit more variable in this food group, and they roughly equate to 500 kilojoules, or that's equivalent to about 120 kilocalories. Examples of a serve here we can see on screen. 1 slice of bread is equivalent to 1 serve. Apologies for the photo of the bread. It's a bit misleading given there's 2 slices there, but it is 1 slice is 1 serve. And for other grains, about half a cup cooked is 1 serve. So rice, oats, wheat, so wheat products like pasta and noodles, half a cup cooked is 1 serve. And if you enjoy other types of carbohydrates, you can see on the box here other options as well. So 1 crumpet or 1 muffin or 1 scone is about 1 serve. The reason why whole grain types of carbohydrates are recommended is because they have a lower glycemic index, or GI. And other sources of low GI carbohydrates include most of your vegetables and legumes. So that's lentils, chickpeas, other types of beans that you might like, as well as many fruits too. And if you're not quite familiar with what GI is exactly, it's essentially like a ranking system for carbohydrate quality of different foods. So they're ranked on a scale from 0 to 100, where 0 is the lowest GI and 100 is the highest GI. And the lower the GI is, the slower your blood sugar levels increase, as you can see in this graph here. So low GI foods provide you with a gradual release of sugars over a longer period of time, whereas high GI foods provide you with a spike in sugar levels, which then quickly drop as well. So a good way that I like to remember it is low rhymes with slow, so low GI, slow increase in sugar levels. Low GI diets as well, not only is good for diabetes, as you're probably all aware, but in terms of links to AMD, low GI diets have been shown to reduce the risk of developing early AMD and higher GI diets have been linked to increasing the risk of developing either type of the late AMD. So that's either the dry or the wet. And this type of diet has also been linked to improving other chronic diseases as well, such as obesity and cardiovascular conditions. I've just provided the cutoffs for what's considered low, medium, and high on the screen. So low GI is anything 55 and under, high GI is 70 and over, and then medium is anything in between that. For the meat and alternatives food group, the servings per day range from 2 to 3 serves, as you can see. Just like the carbohydrates or the grains, I should say, food group previously, a serve is about 500 kilojoules or about 120 kilocalories. It also varies quite a bit depending on the type of meat or alternative in terms of the portion size. So we've got 65 grams here for red meat, 80 grams for poultry, and 100 grams for fish. So a really rough way to estimate that is to think of, to look at your hand. So about palm size is red meat up to sort of your first knuckle there, including the palm is your chicken or turkey, and then the full hand for fish. I do want to mention though that hand sizes or references using the hand is very, it can be very rough and inaccurate given that people's hand sizes vary quite significantly. But if you're really curious and you just roughly want to know what portion size you're eating, it's a good way to do it. I do want to note though, in terms of red meat, you might see that little asterisk there on the screen, which links to the wording below, suggesting a weekly limit of 455 grams. Now, in the last, I think, 2 years, that's actually been revised down to 350 grams by the Heart Foundation, not only for heart health, but higher meat intake, particularly red meat and processed meat, has been shown in across different studies to increase the risk of early AMD as well. But the evidence linking red meat consumption to late AMD hasn't been as strong or consistent. There are also options for meat alternatives down below as well. So about 1 cup of lentils and legumes can count as 1 serve. So you might have noticed that legumes and beans fall in under 2 food groups, so as meat and alternatives and as vegetables as well. So great if you enjoy those foods. Meat and these alternatives, meat in moderation, I should say, and these alternatives are a great source of zinc. And along with whole grains, the research has shown that zinc and fish can reduce the genetic risk of AMD, which I mentioned earlier. So following these recommendations for serves per day can help reduce the risk, genetic risk there. I wanted to focus a little bit now on omega-3s in particular. So fish, especially oily fish like salmon, sardines, anchovies, mackerel that I've listed on the screen are some of the best sources of omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA and EPA. And these fatty acids are concentrated in the eyes, as well as other organs such as our brain. They're essential nutrients, which means that they can't actually be produced by the body from scratch. We need to get them directly, either through the diet by consuming these food sources, or we can get them indirectly by consuming other fatty acids, such as alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, which can be converted to DHA and EPA in our body. So this is a good option to consider if you don't eat fish, or you don't like fish, or you're following more of a plant-based diet, you can consume walnuts, tofu, flax seeds, chia seeds, and also soy and linseed breads to get your ALA, which then can convert to DHA and EPA in the body. So at least 500 milligrams per day of omega-3s, particularly DHA and EPA is recommended for not only general health, but also when you convert that to the amount of fish you're eating, that's 2 to 3 serves of oily fish per week. That's also consistent with the recommendations to protect against developing AMD, as well as progressing to late AMD, and just overall AMD in general. So the evidence is pretty consistent here in terms of the fish being helpful for AMD, but not necessarily the omega-3s on their own. So again, this is why the emphasis on a food-first approach is important rather than relying on supplements. Because for some reason, the food itself and potentially, the complex arrangement of other nutrients with it is beneficial for AMD. But when you've just taken the omega-3s out separately in a supplement form, the effects don't seem to be translated over. And then the final food group is dairy and alternative dairy options. So this is the only food group that actually the serves per day increase as you get older. So up to 4 serves for women over 50, and then 3.5 serves for men over 70. And this is really due to the importance of dairy and alternative dairy products to provide calcium and protein, which is important for bone health and overall health as you get older as well. So serve sizes here, very similar, about 500 kilojoules, so 120 kilocalories, just like the meats and also the grains. And you can see about a cup of any milk, so either from cows or plant-based alternatives is 1 serve, a couple slices of cheese, a tub of yogurt. And in terms of AMD, there have been a couple of studies that have shown that those who reduce their dairy intake and calcium intake over time actually have increased risk of developing late AMD. So I think that aligns quite well with the recommendation to increase your dairy consumption as you get older, which in turn then reduces the risk of late AMD. And then this slide is on supplements. I did, as I have mentioned a few times already, the food first approach is the ideal first way to go. And I would only consider a supplement if you're not able to consume the recommended amount through food, or for whatever reason, whether the food isn't available or the food isn't quite to your liking or tolerance, then you can consider supplementation. So the formulation with the best research is still the AREDS2 formulation. That hasn't changed in a few years now, I'd say. And you can see the formulation on screen. It's a mix of zinc, vitamin C, vitamin E, copper, and then lutein and zeaxanthin. So the AREDS2 formulation comes from a study called the Age-Related Eye Disease Study, which was a research trial investigating different supplement formulations and their effect on AMD. So prior to AREDS2, there was definitely an AREDS1, and the formulation was quite similar. A notable difference would be that lutein and zeaxanthin was not included, and instead it was beta-carotene. But the main reason for the change came from other cancer researchers actually who found that high-dose beta-carotene supplementation actually increased the risk of lung cancer in smokers and people who have been exposed to asbestos, which you might know as a mineral that was really commonly used in homes built before 1990. So findings from the AREDS study showed that the formulation or the supplement was only really effective in people who had intermediate AMD. So that's in between the early and the late, either in one eye or both eyes. And that was able to reduce the risk of progressing to late AMD by about 25%. The supplement was also effective for people who have intermediate AMD in one eye and late AMD in the other eye to help reduce the risk of the better eye progressing to late stage AMD. But the study wasn't able to show any benefit from taking this supplement for early AMD or just for prevention's sake if you wanted to prevent developing it. There was no, it wasn't shown to be effective there. So now that we have a bit of a better understanding about the information around recommended serves and some key nutrients we should be including in our diet, I wanted to put that all together in a 1 week meal plan. So this meal plan was a collaboration with fellow dietitian Bronwyn Eisenhower and other dietitians from Food and Nutrition Australia, along with Professor Vicky Flood, who is a renowned researcher in eye health and nutrition. And I also wanted to acknowledge Australian Eggs as well, who allowed my colleagues the time to put this meal plan together, but they didn't have any influence over the meal plan itself. So the meal plan meets the recommendations in terms of serves of all the 5 core food groups for adults over 70. It also provides, on average, the 6 milligrams of lutein and zeaxanthin per day. It includes the 2 to 3 serves of fish per week, as well as the low GI carbohydrates throughout the week. And again, the meal plan is quite general for an AMD population. So if you do have any other health conditions that contradict the suggestions in the meal plan, definitely speak to a dietitian or a health professional to see how it can be better tailored for you. So this is what the meal plan looks like. So we've got a couple of meat-free days, meat-free Monday and meat-free Friday. The rest of the days do include meat and fish. And for Sunday, I know it's very common to have a Sunday roast, so we've incorporated that as well. So this meal plan will be provided to my colleagues at the MDFA. So if you would like a copy, just get in touch with them, I think via the phone number. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it will come up again on the screen when Hamdi takes over. So give them a call and they can send this to you directly. Or if you're quick, you can take a photo of it. But I just wanted to go through a couple of the days in a bit more detail in case the font size is a little bit too small for anyone. So I'll just go into that now. So this is one of the meat-free breakfasts. So we've got the rolled oats, which is a low GI source, the chia seeds, which is a great source of the alpha-linolenic acid that can be converted to DHA and EPA, the dairy through the milk, fruit for the other vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and then the cinnamon is more for a taste preference. The alternate breakfast isn't too different, but is a different type of cereal, pumpkin seeds, and a different fruit in the orange for the vitamin C contribution. the meat-free lunch, a salad and cheese sandwich, again, providing those key food groups for a balanced diet. This is the meat alternative for lunch. So this is the Sunday roast. The meat with a little bit of olive oil for cooking provides that fat source to help absorb that fat-soluble lutein and zeaxanthin, plus other fat-soluble vitamins as well. So the vegetables are seasonal, so that can be changed as you like. The first dinner is a meat-free dinner, and I've borrowed this from the MDFA's Macular menu. So I think that'll be distributed to all of the attendees today at the end. So feel free to have a look there for this recipe. So it's a red lentil, pumpkin and tomato soup. It includes the grainy sourdough bread for low GI, avocado and yogurt for that fat component to help absorb those fat-soluble nutrients. And a sprinkling of that parsley, which is rich in lutein and zeaxanthin. Dinner option number 2. So this is following a heavier Sunday roast lunch where you're probably interested in, or you're not bothered to cook and you want something quick and easy but still nutritious. So we've got the omega-3 rich sardines, low GI bread, additional fat sauce, and then tomato, parsley and lemon to taste. And then the desserts really focus on the fruit. So we've got here a smoothie. A surprising addition might be the inclusion of baby spinach. Recommend about 1 cup. And it's surprisingly very good. I couldn't taste the spinach myself, but I think I was a bit too experimental and did 2 cups, and that's when it was a bit of overkill. But if you don't mind the taste of spinach, you can definitely add more, but I'd recommend 1 cup if you want the taste hidden. And then the alternate dessert is fruit salad and ice cream. Snack options, English muffin, a bit of peanut butter, or a tub of yogurt and a handful of olives. Okay, I was just checking the time, so I think I've done 40 minutes already, but I've got a few more slides, so I'll go through these a bit quickly so there's time for questions. So the meal plan that my colleagues and I put together was actually part of a project we were working on as part of my PhD, which involved educating dietitians about the links between nutrition and AMD. Because at the moment, there isn't much of an eye health focus in the dietetics course at uni. But given AMD is the leading cause of severe and legal blindness in Australia, my colleagues and I really thought it was important to get this message across and to help train and better educate dietitians out there. And for a similar reason as well, this study also involved educating pharmacy students, because pharmacies are the major retailers of nutritional supplements, including the AREDS 2 formulation, as well as other supplements as well that supposedly do help with AMD. So it is definitely beneficial for pharmacists to know which supplements are actually good for AMD and who the supplements are suitable for. As I mentioned earlier, AMD isn't for prevention, nor for those who have the early stage of AMD. And the 2 educations were very successful and significantly improved knowledge about nutrition and AMD among the dietitians and pharmacy students. And I'm very happy to say that the University of Sydney have incorporated our education for future pharmacy students. So it's part of their curriculum so that up-and-coming pharmacy students through Sydney University will be familiar with nutrition, AMD, and about the supplements as well. And really, we're hoping that this is sort of the first step towards much stronger communication and collaboration between eye care professionals with allied health professionals, such as pharmacists and dietitians, so we can better support people with AMD. And then just to wrap up, I wanted to touch on a new research project that I'm working on thanks to the MDFA. It's called the MINGLE study, and as the name suggests, well, I'll read it out: movement, interaction, and nutrition for greater lifestyles in the elderly, which is why I called it MINGLE for short. It is a bit of a mouthful. It's really focused on bringing people with AMD together on a social aspect. So the first part of this study is a one-off interview just to discuss what the MINGLE program should involve. So we have a really rough idea about what the program should include based off existing programs for older adults that's being run out of Canada and the UK, but these programs aren't specific to people with AMD, just older adults in general. And we really wanted to do these one-off interviews just to get an idea of how we can modify the program so that it's best for people with AMD. Once phase 1 interviews finish, we'll then modify the program accordingly and then commence phase 2, which is actually trialing the program. So the points I've listed on the screen here is based off those existing programs in Canada and the UK. This is what they're currently doing. It's about a 10-week program, all online because of COVID. Groups are kept small, so no more than about 10 participants. And the main aim is to socialize and connect. But there's also a bit of gentle exercise involved, as well as discussion on diet and nutrition, which is always an interesting topic. So the eligibility for phase 2 is being 50 or over and having AMD, being cleared to exercise either via a letter from your GP, or there's a survey that we can do to screen you to make sure that you're fit to exercise, and also having access to a front-facing camera. For phase 1, it's really only the first 2 points, AMD and being 50 or over. So we're still in phase 1 at the moment and recruiting for that. If you are interested, email is on the screen, or if you know someone else who is, happy for you to share my contact details there. If you only want to do one or the other, that's fine too. You can just mention that in the email. But I think that's all I've got for today. I might hand over to Hamdi and we can start with questions. So I'll just stop sharing. There you go.
Thank you so much for that, Diana. Oops. Just give me a second. Okay. Thank you so much for Diana. That was extremely informative. I think we all learned a lot, and I've certainly developed a bit of an appetite over the 40 minutes. If you do have any questions about anything Diana went through, please click on the Q&A icon. We've already got a fair few questions, so that's great. I'll be reading out the questions very shortly, as I mentioned before. Other attendees will not be able to see the questions, and please try to keep the questions general as much as possible. We can't provide any individual clinical advice over a webinar. Before I move on to the questions, I would like to quickly talk about what we do at the Macular Disease Foundation. We operate on a number of pillars of work, the first of which is prevention and early detection. At MDFA, we provide accurate, current, and ongoing information to try and increase the awareness of AMD nationwide. And just last year, we reached almost 7,000 people through our education sessions. We offer support and services, so we provide support for all our patients and also facilitate access to other support services. We are the voice of the macular disease community, and it is our privilege to advocate for the best interests of the macular community at large, whether it be designing policies for state and federal government, or making sure that the medical benefits aren't cut. And 100% of our funds donated for research also goes into our research grants program. And since 2011, we've given a massive 4.1 million to 21 different research projects. So for help, you can reach us on our toll-free helpline for any inquiries you have, not just about nutrition and AMD, but AMD and diabetic eye disease, for example. We can also help you with questions you might have about My Aged Care or Medicare, or if you have someone who does not speak English as a first language, we can provide translated information too. And you can find all our resources on our website. Just a quick reminder about our next webinar. This is our final webinar for the year. Our next one will be next year, obviously. As we look into the role of an optometrist in your eye care journey, don't forget to register for that. We look forward to seeing you then. Now, we do have quite a fair few questions, which we'll hope to get through. And the first of which is, how do you feel about, Diana, how do you feel about saffron supplementation for AMD?
So supplementation in general, I think my stance on that has been pretty consistent throughout the presentation. Food first approach definitely first. If you're not able to get the food and the nutrients from the food, then you can consider supplementation. Then I think saffron, you can consider that if you would like to. I think it's a bit pricier though, so you really want to weigh up all the pros and the cons there. But yeah, only if you're not able to get it through the diet.
Yeah. Is lutein or zeaxanthin better, or are they both the same?
So lutein and zeaxanthin are different, but you would have noticed that I refer to them sort of together throughout the presentation, and that's because they generally exist together naturally. So it's difficult to find sources that only have one or the other. So yeah, I think it'll be easier to just think of them together, although they are different nutrients.
Great. Is taking fish oil tablets the same as eating fresh fish?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit during the talk as well. So fish oil tablets and fish, although you would think that they are the same thing and one could be replaced for the other, but the evidence that we've seen in relation to AMD at least is that it's a lot more consistently protective when you're consuming the fish itself. Whereas if you look at the research evidence focusing on omega-3 or fish oil supplements, I should say, it's really been inconsistent and often leaning more towards the no effect point. So if you can, definitely go for the fish itself first.
Yeah. Another one here, is the serve of legumes, e.g. lentils, cooked or is it raw weight?
Yeah, yep. So for legumes, lentils, if you're considering it as either the meat alternative option or the vegetable option, so it fell into both food groups, in both cases it's cooked. So if you're consuming it for the meat alternative food group, about 1 cup cooked is considered a serve, whereas as a vegetable, only half a cup cooked is a serve.
Are diets such as the Fast 800 or Plant Paradox good to do and enhance AMD or protect against AMD, I assume?
Those kind of diets haven't been looked at in terms of AMD, but sort of diets like the Fast 800 or intermittent fasting, in terms of weight loss, there's, it's equivalent to if you were to follow a healthy, balanced diet. So in that sense, for weight loss, there's no difference between either or. In terms of AMD, there's no research done. My only concern is with fasting, you might not be able to consume all the nutrients needed in the day, given that you have a shorter window to consume, all the food groups. That's probably the only thing.
This is interesting. Is meso-zeaxanthin the same thing as zeaxanthin?
So again, I didn't really touch on this, and maybe I should have, given the questions we've had so far, but it really gets into the chemical structure of these nutrients. So meso-zeaxanthin is different to zeaxanthin, but it can be converted to the same thing. It's just chemically structurally, it's different, but I wouldn't focus or worry too much on that level of technicality.
Just a few questions on supplements. What is your opinion regarding Blackmore's MacuVision Plus? Is there clinical evidence to support its benefits for quote unquote mild AMD?
So I believe Blackmore's MacuVision Plus, as opposed to the non-plus version, aligns with the AREDS 2 formulation, which is great there. But then about the second half of the question, so the mild or early AMD, given that AREDS 2 has shown no effect on early AMD, either developing early AMD or preventing the progression from early AMD, I would say that is the same for the Blackmore's tablets. So that would only be suitable if you have intermediate AMD in one or both eyes.
I think we'll have time for one last question. Is rocket a good substitute for spinach?
Yes, so it is also a dark green leafy vegetable. It wasn't included in my table, so don't worry too much about that. I kind of just picked a range of different vegetables just to show you the different sources that you can get lutein and zeaxanthin from, rather than just only showing you dark green leafy vegetables. But rocket is definitely up there in one of the top sources. So if you prefer that over spinach, you can definitely go for that as well.
We might have time for just one more question. Are roasted and salted pistachios okay, or only raw ones?
So roasted and salted are fine in terms of the AMD aspect. The salted ones you may want to consider for other health conditions if you are concerned about that, if you have any blood pressure or cardiovascular related health problems. But in terms of the fats, and also they're a source of lutein and zeaxanthin as well, they're not too different compared to raw.
I think we've come to the conclusion of our questions. Thank you so much, Diana, for answering all those questions.
No problem.
And thank you to everyone for sending all those questions. If you guys have any further questions, please feel free to email MDFA and we can try and answer them as best we can. At the conclusion of this seminar, we will be sending an email to all attendees. It should arrive in your inbox within an hour or so. It will contain a link for a feedback survey. So if everyone could please fill that survey out, that would be fantastic. It would absolutely help us to improve our sessions for future webinars. You can also opt in to receive our Nutrition for AMD and Macular menu book, as mentioned during the presentation. And a recording of this webinar will be available on the website in a few days. And the link to this will be included in the email as well as a link to all our future webinars where you can register for them. Lastly, I would like to say a massive thank you to Diana. I'm sure we all learned something from it. It was extremely informative. And thank you to all for joining in today's webinar. We wish you all a joyful festive season and a happy new year. Take care of everyone. Bye-bye.